The following is an Ice on Mars presentation.
Some people think that Texas has only one season, that it's summer all year long. In fact, the Lone Star State does have 4 seasons: hot, humid, horrible, and hellacious. But when I decided to road trip with D&D Lisa to South Padre Island, I didn't think that last one would be so literal. I shouldn't have been surprised. I'm Maggie Quinn, psychic girl detective. Lisa is an amateur sorcerer. We aren't exactly normal college freshmen, yet there we were doing the normal college thing, setting off on a rite of passage, spring break at the beach. An odd choice, since I hate any water deeper than a bathtub. I already have a boyfriend, and if you couldn't tell from her nickname, D&D Lisa isn't the beer and boob fest type. Neither am I. But we'd wanted to take a road trip, and the destination had started as a joke. Then I pitched an article to the editor of the Bedivere University newspaper, who seemed amused by the whole world's least likely spring breakers angle, and to my surprise, Lisa went along with it. In the end, our reasons don't matter except to explain how we came to be cruising down State Highway 77 in the smallest hour of the morning, even though we knew, better than most, what kind of things go bump in the night. So begins Highway to Hell by Rosemary Clement-Moore. This episode on
Dread.dialectic.
Dread.dialectic.
Hey everyone, and welcome back for another episode of Dread Dialectic. This is Michael T. Bradley.
And this is Scix Medics.
If you have feedback, comments, questions, feel free to post them down below wherever you're seeing this, or off to the side, or wherever the hell they are on iTunes. I don't know, I just write an XML script. I don't use Apple. But feel free to do that. Or you can drop us a note at dread.dialectic@gmail.com, and also feel free to let us know anything you'd like for us to read. If you yourself have a novel or a novella or one specific short story, now that we're trying to do some short story mini-sodes here and there, any of those things are welcome, and can't promise that we'll like it, but we will almost certainly give it a shot.
We'll talk about it.
That's for sure. We will at least talk about it, and hopefully like it. I mean, I'm doing this to try to find things that I like, right?
I'm totally rooting for you guys because I would far rather enjoy it.
Yeah, for
We're
sure.
on your side.
Unless you're evil, in which case I'm not really on your side. Now we got that out of the way, let's talk about this book we were talking about. Rosemary Clement-Moore's Highway to Hell. This is actually book 3 in the series Girl vs. Evil, correct?
It is. I chose this kind of randomly with a bit of search string in my local library website. I decided to be daring and just sort of grab the first hit. What was it I went for? Like diverse horror, I believe, was the phrase I was searching. And this book does have a diverse cast. Lots of Latino people. It takes place in Texas, so this makes some sense. And it is a young adult novel. And it is, yes, the third in the series, which I didn't know, but as I was reading, I got the feeling. It stands alone fine, perfectly, but it didn't spend time building up the relationships of the main characters, and so I said, most books do that. It's not really necessary. Oh, he's my boyfriend, and he's very smart, it's like, okay, that's the basic framework here that we're building this relationship around.
Yeah, the parts that I read, it seemed very, it was very show, don't tell, but it was also, it was very tell, don't show for the established relationships, but that seemed kind of, to try to do it otherwise might take more time that you don't want to spend when you're trying to get to your plot for this episode in the series.
It has the advantage that most of the book is only the protagonist and one friend. And so they reference the other people in their little party. So by the time they show up, we know who they are, which I think is clever. I think Rosemary Clement-Moore, intentionally or not, did a very clever thing in that.
So this has not really gotten us to a plot outline.
No. We're in the head of, by which I mean the narrator is, I keep forgetting her name. It's Maggie. And Maggie is a seer. She sees things.
She is a dry desert wasteland.
Yes. No, a seer, which is a very popular word in crossword puzzles. She has dreams that give her information, and when she touches things, sometimes she gets a reading on them. And her friend, the witch, who really does magic, but of the spell and herbs and cauldrons sort. And they're going on a road trip, and their Jeep hits a dead cow. Gets all stove up, as we used to say. And so they're
Back in the Lincoln era.
Yes. Very, very standard story type. People trapped in a small town, and they've got to sort of save the day in this small town before they can escape and go where they're trying to go. Doc Hollywood and all that.
Doc Hollywood meets Ghostbusters.
Yes, kind of. So it turns out the problem the town is experiencing is cattle mutilation. They're, kind of small town vaqueros, if I remember the right. They're Latin cowboys, cattle ranchers, and most of the town is owned by the Velasquez family, which happens to have an age-appropriate hunky son who helps out the ladies. Although our heroine does have a boyfriend, the witch friend does not. So she hangs on to Zeke. And Maggie gets, visions of, oh my god, something's going on here. It's not a wild cougar or, there's something dark here. Ooh. And the, some of the ranch hands are like, oh, it's El Chupacabra, obviously.
Of course.
And she's all like, I don't think it's Chupacabra.
It is actually the Shadow Cougar.
Maggie seems to attract or be drawn to things demonic. So demons that can take many shapes can sometimes look like a Chupacabra. So we get sort of a mixed mystery where the solution isn't quite what it looks like, but then they figure it out. There are people with the sight in the town, and they've been protecting the town from ancient evils, and the protection is failing because of oil wells and a drought. Very seer, as it were.
Any trigger warnings?
Not a one.
Ken?
Unless dead cattle is an issue, which you heard from me just now, so...
Let's go ahead and talk about the good in a spoiler-free way, Scix. What did you like about this?
I liked the writing style. I think Rosemary Clement-Moore's lighting was, light and frothy. It's not, it's a cappuccino. It's not a single black shot. There's not a lot of depth here, but when she sets a scene or introduces a character, I think she's good at making them real. I think that when we get to the deep hubba bubba of the story, she's very vivid and disturbing. And so, if you start the book going, is this a horror novel? Yeah, it is.
That is, I for sure felt like it was a horror novel, or at least a supernatural novel.
Right.
I mean, first chapter, it's my best friend the witch was beside me playing with the iPhone, or iPad, shit. What's the iCarly? What's the goddamn one that plays music?
iPod. So, yeah. Yeah, it's slightly dated in the tech, but, not too far behind, but it'll probably feel more dated in a few years. And their cell phones usually work, which is actually surprising for modern horror.
I remember when I watched Jeepers Creepers, and I was like, we have entered the era of horror where one of the big questions for every single horror film, book, or whatever now has to be, why don't they pull out their cell phone?
Right.
I remember that's at least the first movie where I noticed it, where, for instance, Scream was all about the cell phones, right? But it's kind of like acknowledging it and using it as part of the plot is only... you can't do that every episode, right. Like it can't all be Scream or One Missed Call, but you can find more clever ways to work them in. But I remember with Jeepers Creepers, it's like, oh, I get no cell reception out here, and I was like, that's kind of weak, but all right, I guess you have to because,
Right. They have weak reception in this town because it is out in the middle of nowhere, but there's a cell tower like on top of the mansion of the big rich owners. So, and they never run out of battery, they've got a charger. It is a story of people aware of cell phones. Which, yeah, that's nice. It was smooth.
So it's smooth, light, and frothy.
Am I hungry, maybe?
It's not a Guinness of a book, that's for sure.
No, though they can be frothy. Light and smooth are not real. Well, one could argue. Never mind. Carry on. Diverse cast, well written. I should clarify just in case. I think the base concept, once we get to it, is interesting and unique, as well as creepy and a little gross.
All right, so let's talk about the bad.
The plot sometimes is a little railroaded. You know, like, geez, what do I do next? Oh, look, an old lady telling me to come over this way. You know, I mean, not too bad. Certainly not outstanding in the type, and certainly not outstanding in young adult fiction. Part of that light and fluffy is, I believe, because it's written for a young adult audience, and there's a tendency among publishers and schools to believe that young adults can't handle much.
Mm.
And I think that may also be partly why it's pretty light for the first half or so. So people who aren't reviewing it completely don't know just how dark it gets. Honestly, the only real bad is it's the third in the series, and so some things are a little underdeveloped at the beginning, but, you know, that's not the fault of it. That's my fault for not reading carefully what I was reading.
So, first of all, I don't have a problem with young adult stuff. I love a lot of young adult, from Jane Yolen to the first few Harry Potter books. I like most of them. I haven't finished the damn series because it's a long story. But in any case, that there's this great British trilogy that is creepy as all hell, and it's about mice, and like it's creepy and scary, and it's like mice in the city in London. But in general, like I don't have anything against young adults, so that wasn't my problem with it. But so I got about 10% through, and I just literally got to this point where I kept like seeing it on my Kindle because I could borrow the ebook from my library, and just kind of grimacing at the idea of having to go back into it. I didn't get any of the diverse cast, and I didn't get any of the demonic entities apparently that pop up. I just got through essentially them hitting the cow, and that was about where I stopped. And it made me gnash my teeth and rend my garments because I was so frustrated at it. I will say, just as I mean, like, this sounds like such a backhanded compliment, but with a lot of the stuff that I've been reading recently, I will say it's professionally edited. You know, it reads like a real book.
Yes.
So it's definitely got that going for it. But yeah, the subject matter drove me insane because it just felt to me like it wanted to be this mix of urban fantasy and Buffy, but losing everything that makes Buffy unique. Like, it just had a lot of little things like...
They did do some, like, pop culture references that made me think of Buffy, but I thought they came in fairly naturally. You know, we got these two young college-age ladies. That's how they would talk.
So I took notes in that 10% about the things that pissed me off. So first off, they're listening to Sympathy for the Devil as they're driving along,
right?
Which I think is a little like on the nose anyway, but I was like, all right, whatever, rolled my eyes and ran with it. And she had already said a couple of paragraphs earlier that Mick had sang, "Pleased to meet you, hope you guess my name." And then it says, "One little demon summoning," she said, as the chorus began. And I'm like, Sympathy for the Devil doesn't really have a chorus. You could argue that the "Pleased to meet you, hope you guess my name" bit is the chorus, but that just started like 2 lines before that, and so that annoyed me.
Wouldn't the chorus be the hoo-hoo part?
I mean, that's... okay, but I mean, that's still that same part, right? Well, okay, I guess it's the second, according to Google Lyrics, but still, I don't know. That scene, I was like, if you're gonna quote the Stones, like, know the song a little better than to quote it that way. Then later we've got, I just highlighted the last half of the sentence, "made it unlikely that Lisa and I would have to resort to eating each other before someone found us." I found this, like, it's working too hard to be, like, cool and snappy and everything, and that's just how I felt about the writing in general, which is also the case with the last thing that I highlighted, which was this guy. I guess this is Zeke. Right above this is describing him, and I guess I did make it to the diverse cast. He wasn't obviously Hispanic or Native American, but he was definitely the thoroughbred product of a nice mix of bloodlines. I can't tell much in the dark, but it's a pretty sure bet. He hesitated and Lisa finished for him. That we're screwed? Something like that. And it just felt to me like, it's like, that wasn't clever or interesting, and it didn't really tell us anything about the characters, except it's like, look, I'm writing teenage girls. And I felt like it was like Buffy with a lobotomy, I guess, and so it just drove me insane. And part of this might be, something that I found out recently is, I really like Peter David as a scriptwriter. He's written on Star Trek Next Generation, Babylon 5, probably a lot of other stuff that I don't even know about. And he also writes a lot of comics, and he writes novels, usually tie-in novels. And something that I found out recently is, when I read his novels, it always drives me batshit, because I'm like, oh my god, the dialogue is so terrible, and he's so good at dialogue. I don't understand why it's terrible. Then, a few weeks back, I listened to an audiobook of one of his novels, and the dialogue reads great. Like, it sounds great when it's coming out of someone's mouth, whereas it sounds terrible when it's in my head. So maybe this is a case of that.
Maybe your brain actors suck.
Perhaps. But they're really good for a lot of books that I like, and I don't know. For those reasons, this book drove me insane. It felt like I was reading a really bad Buffy script, and I was like, as a script editor, I'm just gonna say no to you and say please keep trying or something. So that's what drove me crazy about it, and that's why I didn't get very far in it. And I was excited. I was like, oh hey, this is a smaller book, and I'm excited because I'll be able to get through it, and blah-da-da-da-da, and I've got a couple of days with the holiday, and then I was just like, nope, not happening.
Well, I don't agree with any of that, but that's okay.
That's what we're here for, is to get at loggerheads at each other.
I do like the idea of brain actors making a difference in how you read it, though. I'm gonna ponder that, because there are books I've read that I didn't like, that now that we've mentioned the concept, like, if that were well acted, would I have liked it more? And I maybe.
And there are, for sure, movies made out of books where I really liked one and not the other, and maybe not necessarily for those reasons, but for perhaps related reasons. Alright, so let's go ahead and move on to the ugly. What do you say? Let's talk about what is it? What is it that's killing the cows?
Big spoiler.
If this is your first time listening, this is where we talk about spoilers, what the monster at the end of the book is.
The nature of the big bad is a big question throughout the story, so yeah, definitely a spoiler. Under the town is a kind of a demon. During droughts, the demon kind of comes up through the cracks in the ground, kills some cattle to drain their blood to get more energy, and gets sort of put down by whoever in the town has the touch. And for the past few generations, it's been the old lady in the house on the hill. I can't remember her name, but Mama...
Esmeralda, probably.
No. She, devout Catholic, built a shrine to Mary, and that sort of set up a protective barrier. This time, however, in part because of oil drilling, the beastie, when he starts to come up, has more ways out of the ground.
History shows again and again how nature destroys the folly of men.
Yeah. And he takes the form of something chupacabra-like as he jumps around, and he sort of escalates. He starts by killing like a dog and then some goats and eventually up to cattle, and then people start getting taken. It turns out that what comes up is only a piece of the demon. The demon's like this big globular thing underground. So as it gets stronger, it starts coming out as flocks and swarms of various critters. Meanwhile, our heroes are trying to set up a stronger protection and or like destroy it utterly. and some of the shapes it takes are really grotesque and disturbing, and in the climax really has a sense of peril, as there's this sort of like, I don't know, swarm of demon mosquitoes and black rain and horses.
Uh-oh,
and
black rain. You know what happens when that comes.
Yes, I do. I thought of that too. Obviously, all the main characters are going to survive, and everybody's going to win. It's you know, sitting down that's going to be the outcome. But it was interesting how they managed it, and I liked it. I thought it was really well done.
So it's kind of like The Blob meets Bon Jovi's Dry County.
Sure.
With a peppering of like It or Twin Peaks thrown in, like
It's a Clive Barker story with something like gaseous under the town and sentient. Yeah, so I mean, it's not a totally unique idea overall, but it's put together very nicely. The setting is very well created, and not a setting that I know. I don't like westerns, but you know, these dry, sere cattle ranches, they're full of interesting people, and that's what makes it.
As a side note, I do like westerns, so if you have a western horror you want to submit to us, probably recommend that I read it.
Ooh, what a good idea.
Have you noticed that, like, at least through, like, the 90s and the early aughts, that was the only way you could do a western, was if you made it western horror?
Yeah, or western sci-fi, sort of Wild Wild Westy.
Yeah, there was a long time, I think, like, in between Unforgiven and 3:10 to Yuma, where there was nothing that was just a western. Some sort of weird law.
Reagan era, right?
Yeah. I'm kind of sad that I really disliked the writing style, especially if it got darker, because I do really enjoy those types of stories that, like, kind of there's a town and there's a secret behind it.
Yeah, me too.
Douglas Clegg's You Come When I Call You comes to mind, as does obviously Twin Peaks.
Right.
A lot of good stories can be told in that way. I felt like it was trying way too hard to be cool, but not doing it in a way that drew me in, I guess. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know. Your mileage may vary, but at least this way you get 2, God damn it, viewpoints. Viewpoints is a word. Mm-hmm. Scix, would you recommend this to other people?
I would.
So this is young adult. How, you know, obviously age is kind of just a number, as I keep telling the parole officer, but it can mean... Obviously age can, you know, like one 8-year-old is not the same as another 8-year-old, but how young adult do you think this is okay for?
The characters are college age, but as we all know, our young adults tend to read much higher than their own, right? So 13-year-olds will read 16 and so on.
Right.
Oh, I have a hard time aging books, but, you know, I definitely high school age, probably junior high would be fine.
I have a hard time sexing chickens.
That is notoriously difficult. There's a school in Japan.
Yeah, I know, that's why I brought it up.
You know, adults who aren't put off by young adult, and at least high school, maybe a bit younger. The grotesquerie is terrifying. It's not gory exactly, and there's no sex or drugs, so the usual markers for young adult are clean.
Cool. Like, if you're like a Puritan family, but you don't mind your kids having nightmares, then this is the book for you.
Yeah, they don't even hold hands. I think there might be a little kissing, but
no hand touching during the kissing.
No. I'm like the stereotypical 6-year-old boy. I don't like the mushy stuff. And I didn't twinge even once through the whole book.
Okay, well, I think that about covers it. Just as a quick reminder here at the end, if you have feedback, thoughts one way or the other, or you have something you'd like to submit to us, dread.dialectic@gmail.com. But until next time, which we're going to do a mini-sode next time, sometime in the middle of the week, we're going to do the Dionaea House.
Yes.
An online short. But until then, this is Michael T. Bradley.
And this is Scix Maddox.
And we are